How you doing?
Very good.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit jet lagged and
Oh.
hangover, but otherwise very good.
That's a nice cocktail.
Yeah.
Hangover and
Will this go out live? I mean,
No.
do I have to,
No.
You can
edit, manipulate.
rewrite everything.
I can make you sound
good.
as long as you do the same for me.
Okay.
Just turn the mic slightly, but these
Yeah.
are not very dynamic.
Good.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we sat in the same room, like, I guess, 3 years ago?
3 years ago, I think.
3 years ago.
15,
Yeah. Came to the States in 2015.
Yeah. Slightly different, no? Have things
The States?
changed? Yeah.
I wonder what changed.
Well, Trump, Netflix.
I was trying to right. I was trying to be a little ironic. Yeah, the country has changed a lot. Do you feel different?
And now I don't feel. I just dip in, and then LA and New York are not so vastly different, But
Yeah.
But the world has changed. I mean, I know Poland had gone off the rails a bit, but now this is more serious even.
Oh yeah, you think so? What's going on here now? It affects everybody.
In Poland, when they were saying, that at least in America they have the institution of democracy. Our democracy is kind of fresh and fragile. We only regained it in '89, whereas in States this is impossible. Whoever comes to power, because you've got this kind of trust in your institutions, and then it seems the institutions in the States can also dissolve, like soap.
Yeah, that's right. If anything, it hopefully will. I don't know how effective it will be in the long run, even if we move beyond this particular phase, which I'm sure we will. I hope that there's some lesson learned about how fragile democracy really is, and how easily it can change even in this country.
Yeah,
it's something, right?
Well, the gulf between the two societies, no? I mean, it really is a polarization, which happens everywhere. It's, all countries are dividing right down the middle, no? And Poland, clearly.
Yeah, you're talking about like France. A right-minded and a left-minded?
Right, it's more small town village against big cities.
Right.
Poland, which had elections recently, regional elections, and all the cities above 100,000 inhabitants voted against the government.
Sure.
Which doesn't mean that in a general election.
Same with Brexit, correct?
Yeah. But that's even more of a mindfuck.
You spent a lot of time living in England, didn't you?
I did, yeah. For longest, my longest
stretch
was in England. Yeah.
But you're in Warsaw?
I'm in Warsaw for the last 6 years.
It's interesting. I mean, we just sort of arbitrarily started chatting about, the state of the world in a 30-second conversation, but the tensions that we talk about between. I wrote notes to myself, which I don't usually do, but I felt like compelled to because I saw the film. I saw Cold War, and how do you say it in Polish?
Zimna wojna.
Zimna wojna.
Zimna wojna.
Zimna wojna.
Yeah,
close enough.
Wojna.
I probably, if anybody Polish is listening, my apologies. But I hadn't seen it, so I was reading all through the production notes, and it brought everything back. Everything, I saw it at the New York Film Festival. And I think, by the way, since you brought that up, I think the astute politicians play them against each other, those two populations. But that kind of tension, and it kind of refers to the same thing I think your title is trying to refer to, right? The tension of between East and West, between modernity and tradition, perhaps.
Not traditional, just parochialism, more.
Parochialism.
Looking in on yourself, for being happy with the way.
Yeah.
With not having anything new and not changing your ways. I once did a documentary, I don't know, you probably haven't seen it, Serbian Epics. It was about the siege of Sarajevo in 1992. And it was kind of precisely, I intuited that this conflict has a lot to do with the conflict between the country, plus some poets who idealized the country, and the city, a modern European city, which was like, in case of Sarajevo, that was pretty manifest. There was this European city in the valley, and it was besieged by, some paramilitaries, but a lot of just farmers under arms, who did their harvesting and then went to shoot from the howitzer at the city.
Yeah.
And it was a very graphic expression of something that emerged around there, this kind of split between the urban, educated, open-minded Yugoslavs and the people who lived in the valleys and didn't think of themselves as Yugoslavs.
Mm-hmm.
And then some intellectuals who jumped on that other bandwagon, sort of pseudo-historians or poets who suddenly started idealizing the nation, the folk.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so, and the use of folk music in Serbian epics, because it started with oral epic poetry of the Serbs in the mountains of Bosnia. I kind of studied this oral epic poetry and realized that Radovan Karadzic came from a family of oral epic poets.
Mm-hmm.
His dad played this kind of one-stringed instrument and retold the history of the great Serbian Empire, from 600 years ago. So I thought, God, this is an interesting kind of aspect of the war, the myth-making aspect, and this kind of the national, one and only national story, narrative, which excludes all the other narratives. And here, in Cold War again, it's back to folk music and how it can be, how beautiful it is, and how easily it can be diverted and co-opted to to do other work for you, to do other.
Right, exactly. So let's help me tease this out because there is, you have these are two lovers, loosely based on your parents, at least from the launching catalyst for the characters are your parents. You have this young, this jazz musician who's this middle-aged man is a jazz musician. He is part of this. Can you tell me the name of the company again?
Mazowsze, but in the film it's Mazurek.
Based on the first place you mentioned, the first company you mentioned, which is real.
That's my prototype, for the fictional one, Mazowsze. Who was also founded in '49 by a couple who traveled the country and collected songs.
Yeah, which reminded me very much of what was going on here in the 50s and early
Lomax,
60s with Alan Lomax and a couple of other sociologists who were collecting folk traditional music around the South or throughout wherever the Ozarks, the Appalachia, wherever they were going. Similar type of idea of collecting this music and cataloging it.
Archivizing it.
Right. And bringing it to the public's awareness.
But it started very innocently. It was a very innocent thing to do, and very worthwhile and wonderful, especially after the war, where a lot of archives were destroyed. So they're really kind of trying to collect it again. But when they and the first version of these folk ensembles, it wasn't just Mazowsze. There was another one called Śląsk. They were quite innocent.
Yeah,
they
Śląsk.
Really
That's the one I knew about.
They really had like kids from the country who they kind of educated, and apparently they had hygiene problems. Also, they actually created a kind of, it was like a boarding school of sorts.
Sure. And that's what it looks like in your movie. Yeah,
that was the first. That was the beginning, and then suddenly the Ministry of Culture saw the potential and kind of upgraded it. Gave it much better conditions, and then then there was no longer kids from the country, but whoever wanted to join. It was quite a good career to join these folk ensembles because you were fed, you were looked after, you were paid, and you went on tours. So it was it's a good deal.
It's a great deal.
So that's why Zula is quite keen to kind of on her way into it.
Well, the folk songs are, once performed, with dance, by the way, as well, often, sometimes, it's very dramatic. It really has a power to it, right? It almost reminds me like a gospel performance, the way that gospel performance does. Once you put all these voices together, it's just this enormously powerful force, and that's what kind of I think you felt when you were a young person in Poland.
Well, when I was a kid, I hated this music because it was
you wanted to hear the Kinks.
Exactly, and stuff. No, because also it was on the radio, on TV, as one and only channel. So, and it was too much of it. They're really pushing it, and to the detriment of everything else. Yeah. So we're kind of sick of it. But when you listen to it, I listened to it, not so long ago. It blew me away. It was really, really beautiful, and just the non-digital character of it is wonderful. That you have this real voices singing. Right. In great arrangements.
Yeah, well, and you personally moved on beyond rebelling against it, as well as the propagandists manipulating people with it. So now you can kind of move on into your own experience of it that's more organic.
And also, like time changes things, and history changes things. Suddenly you look at something
Well, that's what I mean.
in a different context and actually beautiful.
Well, that's what I mean. Right. It's more organic now because you're not feeling manipulated.
Yeah.
That it's a tool or it's...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also it just stands slightly kind of it's very anachronistic, because there's not an ounce of digital manipulation. There's no, it really is acoustic and three-dimensional, and you get the vibrations, when you're in the auditorium, and it's really...
It's meant to be performed live, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the jazz musician...
Well, he's an educated musician. He actually studied composition and so on, but he's into jazz. Yeah,
right. Yeah, right.
But he's not jazz musician.
No. In fact, he performs no jazz, and that's part of his frustration with living in Poland and being part of this company. Is that he feels constrained by it, and for whatever reason, one of the new students or members that is plucked from the countryside is this young woman,
Zula.
Thank you, Zula. The two of them, obviously, he finds her very attractive, and
that's me.
That's your West Side Story. No. That's funny. Then we go to Stephen Sondheim.
She sings totally the wrong song. There are all these kind of peasant kids who are supposed to sing, some folk stuff, and she's no peasant. She's from a small town, but the wrong side of the tracks, and she, when she's actually asked to sing something that she really has in her, that she wants that's hers, she sings this Soviet musical, which is totally a total faux pas. First of all, both Victor and Irena would be emotionally, personally, totally anti-Soviet.
Irena is Victor's colleague. The two of them have been the ones collecting the music and who founded the folk music company that we're talking about.
Exactly. So it was totally the wrong song to sing to them. But for Victor, it's amusing. It's original. She stands out. She's she obviously just cuts across lines with her personality.
And he likes that.
And he likes it.
Yeah, he finds it very attractive. She's an unusual person because they both are. They both, as I try to start explaining poorly, I might add, are just like right on the line of this sort of East-West tension, where he's one of the people who founded and is running this traditional folk music organization, school, what have you, company. Yet he's frustrated by it. He wants to go to the West so he can be free.
Well, it's not just that. He actually quite likes folk music, and when he goes to the West, he uses folk motifs in his compositions. And that Oberek Opoczyński, that's the bebop thing that he performs when we cut to Paris. It's a lot of Polish jazz music, by the way, fed on folk. Fed on folk
Interesting.
tunes.
I didn't know that.
But it's a gig. He'd rather do other stuff maybe, but he likes folk music and he likes arranging. He's a kind of jack of all trades, musically speaking. Where he really starts suffocating is when they change the repertoire and make it much more ideological, and when he is forced to betray his friend Irena, who they're very close friends and kind of lovers. It is implied.
Yes, right.
And he has to dump her, and kind of doesn't come to her rescue when she's in trouble at the Ministry of Culture. And then he discovers that he's being informed on by his lover. He suddenly realizes he has to leave. It's several things coming together.
You must have seen that there was some comical. There's potential for comedy here because it's sort of a almost like a satire playing out. You're very popular right now, and the Sondheim somehow feels out of place.
Yeah,
but she brings some comic tension to the story. Is my point.
She
Zula.
does.
Yeah, I think so.
Because she's a bit anarchic, She kind of creates situations,
sort of like Wanda does in Ida. I thought, where she's also kind of pushing, kind of proud of who she is and her being where she is. I don't feel like either of those characters. In fact, Zula doesn't really want to leave.
No, she has a good deal actually. There's absolutely no reason for her to to leave. I mean, she's got no grudge against the Stalinist
So she-
state.
except
She
she-
wangled a great job, and
Yeah.
she's a bit of a star in that place. And
Mhm.
why would she want to leave?
Be a bigger star, I suppose.
But she comes from very low down.
Yeah.
So for her, her imagination, it doesn't stretch. She doesn't know anything about the West. In 1949,
Mhm.
what could you, and she comes from a small town, Tomaszów Mazowiecki, I can
Mhm.
imagine. So she doesn't have that urge. For her,
Mhm.
getting there is great, and she loves being there, the singing, the dancing, the community, being looked after, being a bit of a star,
Mhm.
and they go on tours. So she's in a good place. And she speaks her mind, and she's quite funny in Paris when she kind of challenges the Victor's ex-lover
Mhm. At a party.
at the party.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's so much more to talk about the film. I do want to mention, though, that it's opening here in New York December 21st,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. And it's being distributed by Amazon Studios. So I guess it'll end up also eventually perhaps on their streaming platform. But
it has a cinema life.
It has a cinema life, and it's an exquisite black and white photography. I know the background of that. Maybe I'll talk about it a little bit when I do an intro. But and your cinematographer, again, is
Łukasz Żal,
okay.
who I started working with on Ida,
Okay.
who took over from the other one on Ida, and
I
turned
see.
out to be a great collaborator.
Oh, that's right. I think we may have mentioned that in the last time.
Yeah.
Are you producing, or do you have? Is there other opportunities, or are you just have in Poland, or you travel to do other work, or you must have?
I invent stories, that, and they tend to be kind of personal. So I do them where they need to be done.
Mhm.
So I've got another one, in Poland that I've had in my back pocket for a while, and then suddenly England's becoming kind of interesting and exotic in the 70s. England in the 70s.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I might end up making a film there, So I just kind of make a film about where I'm at any given moment.
Do you produce other filmmakers, or?
No,
Oh,
I just
okay.
help my students to make films and friends. Whenever we have a quite tight knit community in Poland of filmmakers who kind of just
Sure.
talk to each other and give each other advice. So
And there's that American Film Festival in Warsaw, right?
Wrocław,
Yeah.
in Wrocław, I think.
You've had a lot of people that are on here
Uh-huh.
premiere their film or screen their films at that particular festival.
Yeah, I think
they
first
love it
reform
there.
was I
I would love to go sometime.
it's
I have
great.
to make it there before.
It's a-
And where is it you teach?
I teach at the Wajda School in Warsaw. School founded by Andrzej Wajda, who now died a couple of years ago. But this school is a really great institution that keeps up the good traditions of Polish film school.
Mm-hmm. And so you will be in New York for how long?
Just 2 more days.
2 more days. So you're not coming back for the premiere here?
I'm not, but we won the New York Film Critics Circle. So I'm coming back for that and for the Board of Review awards.
Mhm. Okay.
So I'm going to be back in New York in January.
And since Nico's in the room, other than New York on the December 21st, will it be opening in Los Angeles? Or?
It'll open in LA on the 21st.
21st.
It will be nationwide by the middle of January.
And it'll roll out, obviously, based on, right. Pawel, thank you so much for
Thank you.
for coming on the show again. The second time, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I know this is kind of tacky, not really, but can you do one of these like radio IDs? You know what I'm talking about? Like where you say this is Pawel Pawlikowski and you're listening to Filmwax Radio. You could say the director of Cold War or whatever you want to say.
Okay, this is Pawel Pawlikowski, the director and writer of Cold War. And I encourage you to see this film because it'll open soon.
And you're listening, and then you mention the show because
God.
it'll help. It's fine.
Okay,
I
you can edit.
can
So-
edit together.
so, what
and
is-
you're listening to Filmwax Radio.
And you're listening to Filmwax Radio.
Perfect. Thank you. You passed.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.